Okay, now I apologize. Diane, back to you.
Okay, so back to me. So the introductory letter. So when the journal comes in, when an article comes in, what we do is we fill out the introductory letter. That's what we send to you originally with the journal article. Now, this has the code of the journal article. So it's like 1037 is the number of the article, and then the name of the article. And then in the introductory letter, we put the date that we would like it to come back. And basically the introductory letter is just saying, thank you for reviewing. And it's with the introductory letter, you're going to get a copy of the article to review. You're going to get the rubric as well to fill out. And what we'd like to do, and I'm going to step in a little bit more of what I was going to talk about anyway, is that with the rubric, when you're filling out the rubric, there's a section on there that says you either accept with revisions, reject, might be a couple other things on there. And what's really important is to highlight in yellow what your decision is, because I know some people send back the reviews to me and it's not highlighted in yellow. So I have to really read it to figure out what the decision is, or I have to get back to the reviewer. So the rubric will go with the introductory letter, and the article will go with the introductory letter. Now, with the article, with the article itself, we send it out in Word, the Word format. If you do get one in PDF, please let us know, because what we really would like you to do is blind review it with tracking changes, because that's so helpful to the authors if there's an issue with different pieces of it. So we really want a blind review with tracking changes. And so that's why it's important for it to be in Word, if you can. But if you get it in PDF, let us know. So you get the introductory letter, the name of the article, the number of the article, the date that it's due, the rubric goes with it, and then a copy of the article itself in Word, so you could do tracking changes on that. I don't know if there's any questions about that process so far.
And we're joined by Dr. Maher, Pete, who is the editor of the journal, and he may have some thoughts. Pete, we've started talking and we're in the middle of the process, and we're talking about the letter. We talked about the letter that they'll get, and then we've talked about what they should do if they can't do it. We are recording, so remember that.
Yeah, hey everyone. Sorry, I've been down for the count this afternoon. I'm just getting put back together. So good to see you all. And thank you so much for joining us to help with our journal. We really appreciate that. Yeah, the process for reviewing is appreciated, and it's something that you can help us out with. And Dr. Walker, could you remind me where so we're talking about the review process?
Yes, we were talking about the review process, and we've pretty much covered the basics of it. On the agenda that we had, we're down to Diane and how to read the article.
Excellent. Okay, I can talk about that if Diane wants to jump in as well.
Okay, good. All right. No, can you come in again?
Yeah, so, first and foremost, we're looking for a number of key pieces to an article. Does it hold together as a scientific venture? Is it something that you feel like has a foundation in the literature? Is it something that has methods that fit the question that's being asked? Is the data analysis appropriate to the question that's being asked? Are the conclusions appropriate? So those are kind of the basic pieces that we look for. In addition, we also look for, does it have social work content? And that seems kind of obvious to ask for, but we've gotten journal articles from a wide range of folks, some of whom it makes sense, some of whom it doesn't make any sense for our journal. So we have to review for that. And some it may make sense, but they don't actually make the explicit connection to social work. So that's important. Is diversity, equity, and inclusion handled in an appropriate way as well. So some of the key kind of attributes of what we would expect in an article. We of course are worried about APA and grammar and spelling and things like that. Those are the basics. But if those various pieces are in place, and we feel good about it as an addition to our journal, then you would give that review, share that with the appropriate editor, and then we would compile that and share that with the authors as well.
Anybody have any questions around that? The next item on our agenda is how to use the rubric. And Pete, I was going to share my screen
Yes.
with the rubric on it. And if you and Diane want to talk through this, let me figure out what it is that I want to share. Right there where it says rubric. Let's try that. Okay, let me know when you see it.
I'm seeing something, but I think you have to scroll down maybe.
There it is.
Well, I want to say while we're being the rubric's being pulled up, on the rubric, once again, you will see the number of the article and you'll see the name of the article.
So here is the part that Diane was talking about earlier. Please use yellow shading right here. Can you see where it says decision? Because I can't see what you see.
Yep,
Yeah,
got
we
it.
could see that. Yeah.
Okay, so yellow shading to choose one of these. And then type in your comments.
Can I also share that this comment here, that where you do very high, medium, now the authors do not see that. And at the end of this page, there's information for us to give to the authors. And we really ask that you be specific, because I've had several times authors come back to me and say, I don't understand the comments. What am I supposed to be changing? So they don't see this rubric, but they'll see the information at the bottom of this page about information that you're giving them.
As I scroll down, you'll see that it is not a big, huge rubric. Those are the areas that are required for you to put a check mark somewhere. Significance, appropriateness for our journal. So something around social work. Then the quality of inclusion and attention to diversity, oppression, all the good social work stuff. Then the quality of the writing, APA style, and we're going to touch on that a bit more in a minute. And then quality of the lit review, key findings, theories, and relevance, quality of the methodology and appropriateness of it to address the research questions, then quality of the conclusions and recommendations and discussion resulting from the findings, and then quality of the contribution to the journal. So those are the items on the rubric. And then general and specific comments about any of these things: theory, methods, implications, and or style. Indicate the strengths of the manuscript, which is always lovely to get if you're the author, and then clearly indicate where revisions are needed. Supplement your review with citations when appropriate, and number the comments in consecutive order. So here's a nice space for your comments. And then there you go.
And I would just reiterate what Diane and Beth have said, is that this is what's shared with the authors, your raw comments. So what you say in that space Beth was just sharing, we send that back to the authors. And if it says, you know, trying to think of a good example, but if it's too broad and too simple, it doesn't help the author give us to make the changes. If it's specific and gives them something actionable to work on, and most preferably also, if you could include the document with track changes in it, then we can, with comment bubbles, we can then share that with the authors as well. And we always remove the names, both of the authors it's being sent to you, as well as your names being sent to the authors. So it's a completely blind review process. Only the editors know who's who.
And as I said before, don't forget when you're doing track changes, we don't want your name on them either. So go in and change it to editor or reviewer instead of your name during track changes.
So how are we doing, folks? Is it making sense? I tell my field students, heads up and down or heads sideways. I need
You know,
to know whether I'm making it or not.
I would also add that if you're not sure about, I don't know, some of you may be new to reviewing, some of you may have quite a bit of experience, but if you're new, or even if you just want to ask a question, it's okay to reach out to us and we can kind of talk through. We review the articles before they get to you, not with a fine-tooth comb, but we review them so that you know, we feel like they're good enough. And then you can, you could say, you could give it thumbs down, which is perfectly fine as well.
But I guess what Pete is saying is we don't take anything that gets like thrown over the transom and throw it on to you. We do look at it. Before we go on, Pete and Diane, I can't find the template, and in a minute I'm supposed to talk about it. So if one of you could find
Let me see
the
if I can.
article template, because that's kind of important. Okay, so Diane, tracking changes, have we covered that?
Yes, I just did. I covered tracking changes with, I want a blind reviewer as well, not only the author.
And then expectation of return comments is Pete.
Yeah, I think the question around the expectation of return. So I guess it probably goes without saying, but if you cannot complete the review for whatever reason, you're too busy, it's not an appropriate article for you, please let us know as soon as you possibly can so that we can get you changed. The authors are depending on it. Our review process is depending on it, and it just gets complicated if we get kind of off track in terms of who's reviewing it. It's helpful for us if we've got 2 reviewers who are out and reviewing it, and then we can return that to the authors. But the quicker you can say, yes, I'm in, I'll get it back to you within the time frame that you've asked for, we really appreciate that.
We do, and so do the authors. The template that we have referred to, and the one that I can't find, is what the authors have. So it is the format in which they are supposed to submit. So we, in shorthand, as all of us do, we say APA format. But the template does not require what you and I would think of as APA format. That, you know, Times New Roman 12, what's double spaced, what's not. That's not what the template looks like. The template takes up less space, for one thing, because much of it is single spaced. So what we probably need to do, and Pete and Diane and I haven't talked about this, but we probably need to send you the template so you'll know what they're working from to get going here. But what you don't need to worry about is you don't need to worry about it being Times New Roman, for example. There are lots of options in the world of journals at Walden that there are lots of options for font rather than just Times New Roman. And so that's something that it creeps you out the first time you look at one of them and you think, well, no, I would never take that from a doctoral student, but it's not really the same. To say it's not the same APA makes no sense, and yet it's still true, right?
Yeah, I think what I would add, Beth, is so if you've looked at our journal and you've downloaded any of our articles, they're, I don't know why I say this, but they're beautiful. They are beautifully formatted from article to article. They have the same look and feel to them. That's the purpose of the template. That's why it's sort of, for those of us who are APA
Nerds.
it's not all APA. It's in a format that fits and works for our journal. So we just have to, and the authors don't always understand that. And I think it's less of a concern for you all. We'll make sure that that's what it gets to. What happens is you'll do the first review. Once we get an article that's fully accepted, it will go back to the authors, and then we have a writing editor who will then help them. We call it a form and style editor, where they will work with the authors to clean up the grammar, finalize, that version of APA, get it into a publishable format. And once it's accepted, we pull the switch and it gets published.
So that, I think, is an important thing, but certainly the three of us are here to answer any questions as you begin a review if something doesn't make sense or if something needs clarification. We're here to answer your questions for sure. And you certainly have my email because you've been inundated lately, but you can feel free to reach out on any of that. The other piece that I want to touch on is how much social worky content is required. And each of us, Diane and Pete and I, have a slightly different kind of feel for that. But the important thing is that they don't take something they submitted to a public health journal and just throw it over our transom, right? So that maybe the social work people won't care. Well, that's not exactly how it works. It needs to have a relationship to social work. It needs to have a relationship maybe to the code of ethics or to something social worky, the way I think of it. Pete, Diane, you want to elaborate?
Well, I'm just thinking that, well, clearly we're a social work journal, so I think it does have some kind of social work intent. But I mean, we've had some articles come through that just because it doesn't say social work doesn't mean it's not social work-y. But what we really would like to encourage is that the authors who are submitting put some kind of social work information in there and relate it in some way to social work.
To make it useful for the practitioners.
Correct.
Yeah, and sometimes it's simply change. There are obvious places where they could say this applies to a number of professions, including social work, whatever, clinical psychology, etc. But it has to make sense that it's in our journal. It has to include references to social work and hold together, and it has to be topics that fit in social work in general. And if it's we commonly get international topics that come through our journal, not surprisingly, with the Journal of Social Work in the Global Community. We don't limit it to, other countries, but we generally get, a range of topics that come through. And again, we have to feel strongly that this is something that really fits for a social work journal. So if we're counting on you having another pair of eyes to be able to say, yes, This is something I could read. This is something my students could read. This is something my colleagues could read.
Are we making sense? We doing okay here, folks? Okay, all right, thank you. So the last item on our agenda is the any frequently asked questions. And we've sort of Pete, we covered some before you were able to join us. We did a few questions to make sure that we touched on everything that folks might be interested in. The one that I want to be sure we recap is a conflict of interest. You know, you may be reading along and you may realize that clearly the guy in the office next to you wrote this. I mean, you know, you recognize this. And if you're not comfortable with that, let us know. We'll find another reviewer, especially with this wonderful pool of reviewers that we're developing here. So don't hesitate if there's any reason that you feel like you might have a conflict of interest with it. I serve on a committee at Walden with the grants that Walden funds for students and faculty. And the first thing we do every grant cycle is sign a conflict of interest thing. You know, none of these people do I have a conflict of interest with, or, well, I don't think I can do Diane. You know, she's right there in my core faculty at social work thing, and I don't think I could do hers. So we remove ourselves right up front, and we hope that you will do that same thing. So, questions? Okay. Pete, anything that you want to be sure we said at the beginning that maybe before you got here?
I'm trying to think, you know, our journal's been around since the beginning of our program. It was originally designed that the intent was to have a place for our students to publish. But and please encourage your students. If you have folks who you feel like would be good, this is a great place to do that. We have solid standards. We have really excellent contributions to the journal, and it's a great place. And, you know, I guess in a parallel fashion, if you wanna, you could mentor your students into publishing, and we could talk with them about that as well. We can't, occasionally we'll get somebody who just takes their capstone project or their dissertation, cuts and pastes it into our journal, and that obviously isn't going to work. It's not going to fulfill our expectations for a journal article, but we could work with them on it, and maybe you could work with them as well. And maybe you or a colleague might be interested in publishing. We've got folks who are contributing faculty who have been regular contributors to our journal. So we would love to have you if that's something that's interesting to you.
Absolutely.
And right, Pete, if I'm not mistaken, and please correct me if I am, because one's a reviewer means they can be they can submit an article.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's not a conflict of interest. We would uphold the same blind review process that would include, you wouldn't know who's being reviewed, and the reviewers wouldn't know who you are. I mean, the topic may give itself away, but we would uphold that.
Okay. Well, what I will do is in a minute I will stop recording, and then we will make this available. I think that Dr. McElvain is going to send it out on the listserv so that anybody who wasn't able to join us tonight, and there were several who let me know they couldn't, will be able to see it. And so will you, if something, you know, nags at you that, wait a minute, didn't Beth say something about that? Then you can go back and look at that. So, But again, we're easily reachable by email. We're more than happy to answer any questions you have. I don't think right now we have a backlog, do we, Diane, of articles that need review? Maybe a couple?
Oh, I was on mute. We do not, no, no, I don't think there's, I'm trying to think. I think there's one article I still need to send out. That's it. We do not have a backlog now.
Okay, so the main reason I brought that up is I don't want you to think that, you sat through this and then we just are disregarding you, because we're not. But the other thing we're doing, this is a parallel effort. We're also reaching out to encourage not only Walden faculty, but other folks. And we hope, in the schools or roles where you are outside of Walden, we hope you'll encourage folks to submit articles. So I think that's going to change, and I think you'll wind up with some things to review.
Right. Can I also just add one thing about, because I know that there's several people on this call, and if you go through all this and you decide that you don't want to be reviewer, let us know so we're not putting your name on the list. And because Beth, I'm assuming that you have the names of everybody who's here and their email addresses.
I
So,
do, and I took a picture of the screen.
oh, good, because then we're going to put you, if you don't want to do it, let us know, because we're going to add you now to our reviewer list.
Absolutely. Could one of you all, and I should be able to do this, but I don't think I can. Pete, I think some of them might want to wander around the website and see some articles,
Yeah,
that have been published. Do you have the URL?
yeah, let me pull that up. I was just gonna look. One of the things I just learned last week was that we are now listed, our journal is listed in EBSCO. So if somebody is doing a search on for an article that is in our journal, they'll find it there. So that's
Cool.
kind of exciting. But hold on a second here. I'm almost certain if you do the Journal of Social Work in the Global Community, it's beautiful. If I don't,
I found it really interesting to click through on some articles when I first started playing around with it. So you
What
might
I find, oh, I'm sorry, Beth, I cut you off.
know.
But I was going to say, what I find very interesting is the map around the world about where our articles have been read.
Yeah, it's amazing, the global distribution. And I guess it shouldn't be since its name is global, but it's still cool. And the number of articles that have been downloaded as well, and the number of people who do download, all of that's there. So did you find it, Pete?
yeah, I put it in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thanks to all of you for joining us tonight. I told them before, I think before even Pete and Diane were both here, I told somebody this afternoon, if we just had 6 people, so there would be some little bit of, exchange, I was going to be ecstatic. And look at you guys. So that's wonderful. Thank you. Reach out, send an email. My
There's
phone number's all over my text.
no other questions?
Yeah.
Do you want to stop the recording, Beth, and we can?
Recording stopped.